First, our two questions and their brief answers. 1. How did the harmony of Greek ethical life of the immediate spirit collapse? In brief, Greek ethical life contained a contradiction which had to surface and be destroyed. The contradiction was between human law, the state, man, Creon, and divine law, the family, woman, Antigone. Two absolute laws, the universal and individual, contradict and destroy each other. For Creon, Antigone's brother was an enemy of the state and must be denied burial rights. For Antigone, the divine law commands she must bury her brother. The Greeks had a universal tribal consciousness. They lacked individuality. There was no opposition between the individual and the state, as there is today. The individual citizen was one with the state. Antigone represents the individuality, subjectivity, and conscience that were breaking in upon ancient Greek ethical life. She was the first feminist in history. Also, the nation, the tribe, was essential, not the individual. And everyone had their fixed roles, which were never questioned. From the collapse of Greek ethical life, we move to the Roman world of atoms or legal persons, a private individual sphere, property rights, legal protection from others, etc. But a farce, since the emperor owned everything. This is the beginning of universal alienation from society and the world. 2. After the collapse of spirit's immediate form, Greek ethical life, and the Roman legal person, individual consciousness becomes alienated from its world. We see the medieval split into two worlds and advance from the medieval to the modern period. Discuss the 4 stages of this self-alienation leading up to the French Revolution and the Terror. In brief, 1. Culture, the first attempt to overcome alienation. Here, the individual is essential. The state, society, and laws are unessential. The natural individual must now create and educate herself and define her role and profession. Culture's values of state power and wealth prove to be unstable. Each are both good and bad, noble and base. State power is first good, has a universal interest, then bad, is impersonal, and doesn't represent me. Wealth is first bad, qua private individual self-interest, then good. It helps one earn a living, have a profession, provide for one's family. 2. The rejection of society's values as contradictory, hypocritical, and false by the disrupted hippie consciousness, living in a soulless world. Rameau's nephew Diderot. This has 2 solutions. A, to go outside itself to another heavenly world, faith, or B, to go inside itself, where the self or reason alone is reality, pure insight. 3. The clash between religion, faith, and enlightenment, pure insight. Both are one-sided, and enlightenment struggles with superstition. Faith ultimately being defeated, there is no beyond, only this world. absolute being becomes A, God, and B, matter, materialism, which reduce to the same one thought. This leads to utility. Things are only useful because my will is universal, supreme, and all reality. Finally, 4, absolute freedom. This universal will of utility leads to the absolute limited freedom of the French Revolution, where all social classes and particularity are destroyed. Cf. the Terror and Guillotine. We then move from France to Germany, where true absolute freedom is realized in the morality of conscience, Kant and Fichte, and in the recognition of evil and forgiveness, resulting in absolute spirit, God, and kingdom come. Okay. A, the true spirit, the ethical order. The ethical order is spirit in its immediate form, a form which contains a contradiction relating to its two ethical powers, the human law and the divine law, which issues in its collapse and transition to a higher form. First, the general context. A, the ethical world, human and divine law, man and woman. There are 3 points. 1, as said, the spirit of the Greek ethical world is universal and tribal. The moment of individuality is dormant, undeveloped. Thus, the individual is completely one with the community and world, not yet separated from it. As immediate, alienation is not yet present. Also, there is only one world or realm, not two, as will occur in the next medieval period. The Greeks had no transcendent heavenly world above their present world. 2, the ethical order was divided into and governed by 2 absolute ethical powers assigned to the 2 sexes: the human law, a law of universality which governs the state, the sphere of man, and the divine law, a law of individuality which governs the family and its members, the domain of woman. This meant that one's role and duties in life were given and determined by one's sex and the ethical power to which one belonged. There was no freedom of choice in this matter. One's duties, what one had to do, was unquestioned. The woman's supreme duty and deed, prescribed by the unconscious divine law of the underworld, concerned death, the death of a family member. Her duty was to bury or perform burial rites for its dead member. The idea was that the death and decay of the body should be an action consciously and ethically done, so that nature and the irrational would not have the last word. The burial prevents the dishonoring of the dead family's member by lower life forms. 3, of the 3 family relationships, husband and wife, parent and child, brother and sister, the relationship of brother and sister is the most sacred and ethical, as it is a relation devoid of desire and of equality, where brother and sister are in each other's eyes equals. Hence, quote, the loss of the brother is therefore irreparable to the sister, and her duty towards him is the highest, end quote. B, ethical action, human and divine knowledge, guilt, and destiny. The contradiction endemic to the ethical world, resulting in its collapse, finally surfaces with the ethical action of burying the dead, which Hegel finds perfectly depicted in Sophocles' Antigone. In brief, Antigone, the daughter of Oedipus, performs the absolute duty of the divine law and buries her dead brother, Polynices, that is, in violation of the edict of the human law made by Creon, the ruler of Thebes, forbidding the burial of an enemy of the state. In short, both laws and actions, hence the two ethical powers themselves, violate each other. Antigone and Creon are both right and both wrong, hence equally guilty. The destiny or necessity of the ethical order, a natural, immediate order, was therefore its self-destruction. As Hegel says, quote, "Only in the downfall of both sides is absolute right accomplished, and the ethical substance's omnipotent and righteous destiny steps on the scene." End quote. C, legal status. The universal ethical being has thus split up into a mere multiplicity of individuals, as Hegel says, and this lifeless spirit or soulless community is an equality in which all count as the same, as persons, end quote. The ethical world was without individuality, and with its demise we now advance to the Roman world of persons and legal right, the first of three stages in which individuality becomes actualized. The others are those of culture and pure insight. In the ethical world, the individual citizen was one with the community. But with its demise, we see the beginning of the individual's alienation from society and the world. Society is split up into a multiplicity of atoms, of legal persons, with legal personal and property rights, and living in their private individual spheres. The reality, however, is that the legal rights and dignity of individuals is a farce, because the Roman emperor, quote, "the Lord and Master of the world, who considers himself an actual living God," end quote, is the de facto owner of everything, persons and their property. Nevertheless, and despite the universal misery inflicted upon the Roman world, the self, the person, the individual, has also, in the person of the emperor, been acknowledged as the universal reality. As Hegel summarizes, quote, "The actuality of the self that did not exist in the ethical world has been won by its return into the person. What in the former was harmoniously one now emerges in a developed form, but as alienated from itself," end quote.